In this tutorial, I will not try and sell you any LUTs, and I will not start rambling about Squarespace in the middle of the video. And yes, the free version of DaVinci Resolve does support 10-bit footage, but it's 10-bit 420, not 10-bit 422. However, it's only the higher end devices from DJI that can shoot 422, like the Inspire, the Ronin, and the Mavic 3 Cine. And if you shoot with any of those devices, you can afford the studio version as well. But if you're not shooting with any of those devices and you're still having troubles, it's most likely your software that needs an update. Alright, let's focus and lock in. Head over to blackmagicdesign.com and download DaVinci if you haven't already. Alright, so first up, we need to open up DaVinci Resolve and start a new project. Now once inside, we're going to go down and hit the cog wheel down to the right, then click Color Management, and for the timeline color space, we're going to change this to DaVinci Wide Gamut Intermediate, and the output color space, we're going to set this to Rec 709 Gamma 2.4, but if you are on a Mac, you're going to set this to Rec 709A, but we are on Windows, so we're going to set this to 2.4, and then we're going to hit Save. Next up, we're going to find our clips and import that to our media pool, and when it asks about frame rate changes, just hit Don't Change. Next, drop your clips onto the timeline. After that, we're gonna go ahead and head over to the Color tab. So once inside the Color tab, we're gonna go ahead and click the clip we're gonna work with, and then we're gonna click on the node, and now we're gonna add another node. So we're gonna hit Shift S to add another node, but if you're a Mac user, you're gonna have to hit Option S. Then we're gonna go ahead up to the right and search for something called Color Space Transform, and we're gonna drag this onto our second node, and then we're gonna drag it again to our first node. Set input color space to DJI D-Gamut, input gamma to DJI D-Log, output color space to DaVinci Wide Gamut, and output gamma to DaVinci Intermediate. Then click the second node, set input color space to DaVinci Wide Gamut, input gamma to DaVinci Intermediate, output color space to Rec 709, and output gamma to 2.4, and again here, if you are on a Mac, set this to Rec 709A, but we are on Windows, so we will set it to 2.4. So from this point, the footage will look good, but in this tutorial, we're going to take this a step further. And something that is really important from here is that when we work from here on out, we never touch the first node or the last node. Everything we do in between the first and the last node. And first up is fixing the white balance. So hit Shift S or Option S to add another node. And to make this a little more clean, we're going to right click this node and label it white balance. To fix the white balance, we need to bring out our vector scope down to the right. And our mission here is to center this white blob as much as possible. But first, let's deactivate our color space transform nodes to make this a little bit easier by clicking the numbers down in the left corner of the nodes. To center the blob, we typically use the temperature and tint controls. And as you can see, when we start moving these, the blob starts shifting on the vector scope. But in this shot, I'm already happy with how I set the white balance in camera, so I won't make any changes for now. When you're satisfied with the blob being centered, go ahead and reactivate the CST nodes by clicking on their numbers again. Add another node. This one will be for contrast. Adding contrast will drastically improve your image. For drone footage especially, I like to really push this. Around 300 is usually my sweet spot. And as you can see, if we look at the before and after, it makes a massive difference. It really brings the footage to life. Nice. Alright, next up, we're going to add another node. And this time, we're going to adjust the highlights and the shadows. We're also going to check the waveform down to the right, because I want to talk a little bit about exposure. The better you expose your footage in camera, the easier it's going to be to grade. Down to the right here, we have the waveform. This shows how the footage is exposed. It might look complicated, but it's really simple. The top of the waveform represents the brightest parts of the image, and the bottom represents the shadows. Ideally, you want your information to stay between around 896 and 128 to make sure you're not clipping any highlights or crushing any shadows. In my shot here, you can see I'm almost completely crushing the shadows, but that's intentional. I exposed this way to protect all the details in the highlights, because in this frame, the sky is the hero. So this white line you see down here to the right represents the darkest part of the image over here on the right side. And this white line to the left represents the darkest part on the left side of the frame. And the waveform peeking up at the top here, that's from the sun. Now we're going to pull down the highlights. This will mostly affect the brightest parts of the image, and it's going to drastically improve the footage by bringing out a lot more detail. You can already see the difference here when we compare the before and after. Because of the dark foreground, we're going to drag up the shadows a bit. But as you can see, it also affects too much of the upper part of the image, and we don't want that. This brings us to the most complicated thing we'll do today, and that is adding a power window. I wanted to keep this tutorial as simple as possible, but this step is essential for drone footage, and honestly the faster you learn it, the better off you'll be. This is one of those things that looks tricky, but it's really simple, and I'll show you. Click the window icon down to the left, and then select this shape right here. This brings up a line with an arrow. And now everything we adjust will only affect what's above the line with a nice soft transition where the arrow points. Next we need to adjust the position. Click and hold the arrow, then rotate and move it so it only covers the darkest part of the image. Now when we lift the shadows, it only affects the lower portion. Exactly what we want. And another pro tip here is always think about the edit when you're shooting. As you can see when I play this clip, because I am not flying up or down, I'm just panning sideways, the power window stays perfectly in place throughout the whole shot. That makes things way easier in post. Next, we're going to bring out those beautiful colors in the shot. Go ahead and add another node and label it color. There are a few ways to do this, but I like to use saturation and color boost. The problem is when we increase those, it affects the entire image, and we don't want that. I only want to enhance the sky. Now we could use a power window to mask out the sky, but instead I am going to show you another method. Click the curves icon, then go to hue versus sat. Now click directly on the color you want to enhance. For me, that's the yellow in the sky around the sun. You'll see a white circle with a black dot up here on the curve. Just grab that point and pull it up. Now check the before and after. You can see it makes a big difference, and it only boosts that specific color without touching the rest of the image. One thing to keep in mind though, if there are other parts of the shot with the same color, those will get boosted too. Now let's say we went with the power window option instead. If we boost the saturation here, you'll notice we're not only affecting the yellow, we're also pushing the blue parts of the sky. And for me, that's too much. To fix that, we can go back to the curves. Click hue versus sat again and then target the blue colors. Now we're just gonna pull that down instead. That way we remove some of the blue saturation while keeping the rest of the image looking clean. And one last trick you can use, especially for a shot like this, is simply increase the white balance. That will boost the orange tones in the sky like crazy and give the whole image a much warmer feel. But for this shot I actually prefer keeping the look we already have, that nice teal and orange vibe. Now speaking of looks, I'm also gonna pull down the shadows again in this scene, because I do prefer a much darker scene. This might be a little too dark, but my point here is that there's really no right or wrong if you like something. Now I'm going to show you how you can apply this grade to your other clips, and also I'm going to show you how to save it so you don't have to redo everything the next time you open up DaVinci. So right click the frame and select grab still. Then right click the still and hit export. Name it whatever you want, just make sure to save it as a DRX file. Now head over to the power grades on the left, and as you can see I already have a bunch of grades I have been working on. Now to bring yours in, just right click, choose import, find your file and load it in. So now if we delete everything we've been working on, we can simply drag the saved grade over and drop it. And to copy your grade to your other clips, just select the clips you want to apply it to, then click your mouse wheel on the clip that already has the grade. Now this worked surprisingly well here, even though it's not the exact same scene, but if we try it on the glacier clip, you'll see it doesn't work as well. This is why I recommend saving only the first two nodes, the ones with the color space transform, because those will always be your starting point. That way you won't have to worry about setting up color management from scratch every time. Now let me give you a quick workflow example to show how this can look. So I'll drag in the grade we saved. I'll add another node, increase the contrast, adjust the shadows for mood, and boost some color. And just like that, it already looks good. That took me 5 seconds. Now for this glacier shot specifically, I would also add some detail, because we got a glacial arm and some nice rocks in the frame. And as you can see, pulling out detail here makes a massive difference. I wouldn't do this though for the first shot we worked on. For that one, I'd actually decrease the detail for a softer, dreamier vibe. This is usually how it goes. If you want the best looking footage, you have to spend time tweaking and refining. It's not worth doing on every single clip, but for your most spectacular shots, it's definitely worth it. Now for this glacial arm, I've actually saved a custom grade I spent a lot of time on. It leans more into a teal look and brings out some orange in the rocks. I think this looks pretty cool. And the first shot we worked on, I've also done a heavier grade on that one. It might even be a bit too much, honestly. That version also includes some studio-only features which I'll cover in an upcoming DaVinci Studio tutorial. I highly recommend you check out my video on the best settings and how to properly expose your drone footage in D-LOG. It's really important, and these two videos go hand in hand. So hopefully this video brought you some value, or at least helped you out in some way. And before you leave, I would be very grateful if you decide to smash that like and subscribe button. That means a lot. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Take care.